Back everyone to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a conflict that's been simmering for over 70
Wow,
years.
that's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long one, and it's a story that's often overlooked. We're talking about India and the Naga insurgents.
Right, and specifically, there was this supposed peace deal in 2015.
Exactly. It was supposed to be this big historic moment, a turning point.
But then the whole thing just went dark.
Yeah, it's shrouded in mystery. The details of the deal were never actually made public, so we're left with a ton of
Like,
questions.
why all the secrecy? What were they trying to hide?
And who ultimately benefits from this so-called peace? That's what we're going to unpack today.
It's going to be a fascinating deep dive.
For sure. To really understand this conflict, you got to go back to the beginning, 1947.
That's when India got its independence, right?
Exactly. And right alongside India's declaration, the Naga people, they declared their own independence.
So from the very start, there was this tension.
Absolutely. And that tension, it quickly escalated into a full-blown conflict. Decades of fighting, a lot of casualties, and heavy militarization of the region. It's a really heavy legacy.
You can't downplay that history. It sets the stage for everything that follows.
For sure. So when Prime Minister Modi comes out in 2015, announces this historic peace accord with the NSCNIM, the biggest Naga insurgent group.
There was a lot of hope at the time, right?
Oh yeah, a ton of optimism.
Yeah.
People thought, okay, this is it. Maybe peace is finally on the horizon.
But then, nothing. No details. No explanation.
Just silence. And that's the heart of the mystery, right? Why keep the terms of a peace deal secret?
It raises all sorts of red flags. What are they so afraid of people finding out?
And that's what we're going to try to figure out. Our source material points to some possible explanations for this secrecy.
Let's dive into that. What are some of the leading theories?
So one possibility is that India, they made promises they couldn't keep.
Like what kind of promises?
Well, one of the big Naga demands has always been Nagaland.
Ah, that's the idea of a greater Nagaland.
Right.
Unifying Naga areas that are currently split across different states.
Exactly. But giving the Nagas that kind of autonomy, that would have huge implications. It would have caused a lot of pushback from neighboring states like Manipur and Arunachal Pradesh.
So maybe India hinted at something like Nagalim during the negotiations just to get the NSC and IM on board.
That's one theory. But knowing they couldn't actually deliver on that promise, they kept the whole thing under wraps.
It's like a strategic ambiguity, trying to keep everyone happy without actually solving the core issues.
Right. But there's another, even more cynical theory out there.
Oh, lay it on me.
Some people believe that the deal wasn't really about achieving lasting peace at all.
Okay, now that's interesting. What was it about then?
It was about dividing and weakening the Naga movement itself.
Divide and conquer. Classic tactic.
By offering some minor concessions to the NSCNIM, India might have been trying to create a rift between them and other, more hardline factions.
So it's less about peace, more about control.
In a way, yeah. And the fact that the NSCNIM is still actively recruiting, still has operational camps, well, some people see that as evidence supporting this theory.
So even with the deal, the conflict is still simmering beneath the surface.
Exactly. And to make things even more suspicious, even some high-profile politicians in Nagaland, they claim they have no idea what's in the deal.
Wait, so not even the elected officials know?
That's what they're saying. They're completely in the dark, which again just adds to the whole what are they hiding vibe.
It's like this deliberate effort to control the narrative, to prevent any kind of scrutiny.
Totally. And then you throw in the involvement of outside players like China and Myanmar, and it gets even more complex.
Right. Those two countries have been involved in the conflict for years.
Exactly. There are reports of China providing weapons and training to the insurgents.
And Myanmar, with its porous border with India, has provided safe havens for them.
It's a whole web of geopolitical intrigue. And our source mentions something really interesting. There are rumors that India might be negotiating with both China and Myanmar to try to get them to stop supporting the insurgents.
Oh, wow. And what would India be offering in return?
Economic incentives. Think trade deals, infrastructure projects, that kind of thing.
So potentially prioritizing economic interests over actually addressing the root causes of the conflict.
That's the implication. And for the Naga people who've been fighting for self-determination for decades, that could feel like a huge betrayal.
Absolutely. So we have to ask, who's really winning in this situation?
Right, that's the million-dollar question. And our source doesn't hold back in their assessment. They lay out the winners and losers pretty clearly.
Let's hear it. Who do they say comes out on top?
Well, they argue that the Naga rebels themselves, Despite the peace deal, they haven't really achieved any of their core demands.
The Naga civilians, they're still stuck in this limbo, dealing with instability and uncertainty.
Exactly. And even the Indian government, sure, they can claim a victory, but it's a pretty superficial one when you look at the reality on the ground.
So who are the real winners, according to the source?
They point to a few groups: corrupt politicians who thrive on the chaos, insurgent leaders who maintain their power and wealth through things like underground taxation, and even big businesses who can exploit the region's resources more easily when there's less oversight.
It's a pretty cynical view, but I can see how they reached that conclusion.
And what worries me is the future. The 2015 Accord, it was meant to pave the way for peace, but it seems like it might have actually created new divisions within the Naga community.
Different groups vying for power, unsure of who to trust.
And the fact that underground taxation is still going on, that tells you that the power dynamics haven't really changed that much.
Right. Without a clear path towards self-rule or some form of greater autonomy, it's hard to imagine genuine lasting peace.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Will the details of the peace accord ever be revealed?
Will the NSC and IM come clean about what they agreed to? Will the Indian government finally be transparent?
It feels like we're at a crossroads. This lack of transparency, it's just breeding distrust and speculation.
And as our source points out, there's a real risk that the whole thing could unravel.
Exactly. If the accord fails, we could see a resurgence of violence.
So let's circle back to the central question. Is this peace deal the real deal, or is it just a smokescreen?
Was the idea of Nagaland ever a genuine possibility, or was it just a bargaining chip used to manipulate the insurgents?
And how much influence do China and Myanmar still have over the situation?
These are questions that each of you listening needs to consider.
What are the consequences of keeping a peace agreement secret? What does it say about the relationship between a government and its people?
And ultimately, is the fight for Naga self-rule over, or is it just evolving into a new, more subtle form?
These are complex issues with no easy answers.
But they're issues that deserve our attention, and we hope this deep dive has provided you with some food for thought.
What do you think India should do? Should they reveal the details of the deal? What future do you envision for the Naga people?
We encourage you to keep digging, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Until next time.